Have you ever had a moment when someone you loved looked at you differently? Not with anger, not with cruelty, just with the quiet realization that you had become a responsibility. A few years ago, a woman named Eleanor sat across from her son at the kitchen table. She was 78 years old, widowed, retired, alone. She had spent decades caring for her family. She attended every school event, every birthday, every emergency. When her husband was struggling, she stood beside him. When her children needed help, she never hesitated. So when age began slowing her down, she assumed that same devotion would naturally come back to her. But one evening, her son said something she never forgot. "Mom, you need to stop depending on us for everything." The words weren't spoken with hatred. They were spoken with exhaustion. And somehow, that hurt even more. Eleanor went home that night and cried. Not because her son was a bad person. He wasn't. He had a job, a wife, bills, responsibilities, and worries of his own. What broke her heart was realizing that the life she imagined for old age no longer existed. The truth is difficult to hear. Your children may love you deeply and still be unable to carry you. Your family may care about you and still be unable to save you. And one day, if you're fortunate enough to live long enough, you'll discover something that many seniors learn far too late. Love and support are not the same thing. Today, more older adults than ever are living independently. Many have children. Many have grandchildren. Yet countless seniors quietly admit that the things keeping them strong each day are not their families. They're something else entirely, something more reliable, something they can control. At 78, Eleanor discovered 5 things that supported her more than her own children ever could. 5 things that gave her confidence, dignity, purpose, and peace. And if you're over 60, over 70, or simply thinking about the future, these 5 things may become the most important investments you ever make. Before we begin, leave a comment telling me your age and where you're watching from. And if you're interested in living stronger, wiser, and more independently as you grow older, subscribe and join our community. Now let's talk about the first thing that truly holds us up when nobody else can. A few months after her son told her to stop depending on him, Eleanor noticed something unsettling. Nothing was wrong, and that was the problem. Her bills were paid. Her health was reasonably good. She had food in the refrigerator and a comfortable place to live. Yet every morning felt the same. She would wake up, make coffee, watch television, scroll through old photographs, and wait for the day to end. One afternoon, she caught herself staring out the window for nearly an hour. Not thinking, not planning, just waiting. And in that moment, she realized something important. She wasn't lonely because she lived alone. She was lonely because she no longer felt needed. For most of our lives, purpose is assigned to us. We raise children. We build careers. We care for spouses. We solve problems. People need us. Then retirement arrives. Children grow up. Families become busy. The phone rings less often. Suddenly, nobody is asking for your help anymore. Many older adults assume this should feel like freedom, but for some, it feels like disappearing. Eleanor told me later, "I didn't miss being busy. I missed feeling useful." That single sentence explains why so many seniors struggle after retirement. The human heart was never designed simply to consume time. It was designed to contribute. Researchers have repeatedly found that older adults with a strong sense of purpose tend to report higher life satisfaction, better emotional health, and greater resilience during difficult periods. Not because purpose eliminates problems, because purpose gives problems meaning. A few weeks later, Eleanor saw a notice posted at her local library. Volunteers needed. Reading assistance for children. She almost ignored it. After all, she had never been a teacher. What could she possibly offer? But something inside her pushed her to try. The first day, she sat beside a shy 8-year-old boy who struggled to read simple sentences. At first, he barely spoke. Then slowly, week after week, he improved. One afternoon, he finished a page without help and looked up with a smile. "Look, I did it." Eleanor drove home that day, feeling lighter than she had in years. For the first time in a long time, someone needed her. Not because she was family, not because she was obligated, because she had something valuable to give. And that's when she discovered a truth many people learn too late. Purpose doesn't come from being important. It comes from being useful. Maybe your purpose isn't volunteering. Maybe it's mentoring someone. Maybe it's tending a garden. Maybe it's caring for a pet. Maybe it's checking on a neighbor who lives alone. The activity itself matters less than the feeling it creates. The feeling that your presence makes a difference. One viewer once wrote, "At 79, I stopped asking who would take care of me and started asking who I could help." That's a powerful shift, because when your happiness depends entirely on what others give you, disappointment is inevitable. But when you focus on what you can still give, life opens up again. Eleanor eventually stopped waiting for her children to fill the emptiness she felt. Not because she loved them less, but because she realized that purpose was never supposed to come from them. It was her responsibility to create it. Today, at 78, she still volunteers twice a week. She still helps children learn to read. And when people ask her what changed her life, her answer is surprisingly simple. I found a reason to get out of bed. And sometimes, that's where a better life begins. A year after her husband's death, Eleanor stopped paying attention to the clock. At first, it felt liberating. She woke up whenever she wanted, ate whenever she felt hungry, stayed up late watching television. Some days she never even left the house. There were no schedules anymore. No one waiting for her. No responsibilities demanding her attention. For a little while, it felt like freedom. Then something changed. The days started blending together. Monday felt like Thursday. Morning felt like evening. Entire weeks seemed to disappear without leaving behind a single meaningful memory. One afternoon, Eleanor realized she couldn't remember what she had done the previous day. Not because she was losing her memory, because nothing memorable had happened. She told me, "I wasn't living anymore. I was simply passing time." Many older adults face the same problem after retirement. For decades, life follows a rhythm. You wake up at a certain hour. You go to work. You eat lunch. You return home. Your schedule creates structure, and structure creates stability. When that structure disappears, many people assume they'll naturally enjoy their freedom. Instead, they often discover that too much freedom can become a burden. Without a routine, it's easy to lose momentum. Without momentum, it's easy to lose purpose. And without purpose, even simple days can feel empty. Eleanor decided she needed to change something. Not dramatically, just enough to give her days a shape. She started with one simple rule. Get out of bed by 7:30 every morning. No excuses. No staying under the blankets because the house felt quiet. Then she added another habit. Eat breakfast at the kitchen table. Not in front of the television. Not while scrolling through her phone. At the table, just like she had done for decades. Next came a morning walk. Only 10 minutes. Nothing strenuous. Just enough to feel the fresh air and remind herself that the world still existed beyond her front door. Slowly, something remarkable happened. Her days stopped feeling random. She began looking forward to small moments. Her morning coffee, the familiar faces she passed during her walk, the sunlight coming through the kitchen window, the evening book she read before bed. These weren't exciting events, but they became anchors. And anchors are what keep us steady when life feels uncertain. One of the greatest misunderstandings about aging is the belief that happiness comes from having fewer obligations. In reality, many seniors thrive when they maintain meaningful routines. Not because routine is exciting, because routine creates confidence. When you know what tomorrow looks like, tomorrow feels less frightening. Eleanor eventually developed a rhythm she loved. Wake up, make the bed, eat breakfast, walk outside, read for 30 minutes, volunteer twice a week, call a friend every Sunday afternoon. Simple things, ordinary things, but together, they created an extraordinary sense of stability. Today, when people ask Eleanor how she stays positive, she doesn't talk about luck. She doesn't talk about her children. She doesn't talk about having more money. She simply says, "I gave my days a purpose and my hours a place to belong." Because in old age, a good routine does more than organize your time. It reminds you that your life is still moving forward. And sometimes, that reminder is exactly what keeps you strong. When Eleanor was younger, she believed financial security meant having a large amount of money, a bigger house, a larger retirement account, more savings in the bank. But at 78, she learned something very different. Financial independence isn't about how much money you have. It's about how much control you have over your life. Several years ago, Eleanor faced an unexpected expense. Her water heater failed in the middle of winter. The repair bill wasn't enormous, but it was enough to make her nervous. For the first time in her life, she considered calling her son and asking for help. She stared at the phone for nearly 20 minutes. Then she put it down, not because she was too proud, because she realized something important. Every time she depended on someone else financially, she gave away a small piece of her freedom. Now, there's nothing wrong with accepting help when you genuinely need it. Most families want to help each other, but Eleanor understood that relying on others for every financial problem creates a kind of quiet anxiety. You begin wondering whether you're becoming a burden. You hesitate before making purchases. You feel guilty asking for assistance. And slowly, your confidence begins to shrink. After that experience, Eleanor decided to take a closer look at her finances. What she discovered surprised her. She wasn't spending too much money. She simply wasn't paying enough attention to where it was going. There were subscriptions she rarely used, services she had forgotten about, insurance policies she no longer needed, small monthly charges that seemed insignificant on their own. Yet together, they added up to hundreds of dollars each month. So she made a list. Every recurring expense, every bill, every automatic payment. Then she asked herself a simple question. Does this still improve my life? If the answer was no, she removed it. Within a few months, she had freed up enough money to create something she called her peace of mind fund. Not an emergency fund, not an investment account, a peace of mind fund. Money set aside, specifically to prevent panic when life became unpredictable. Because life always becomes unpredictable. The older we get, the more important that cushion becomes. A medical copay, a home repair, a car problem, a dental bill. These things don't wait for convenient moments. And having even a modest financial reserve can make the difference between confidence and fear. But Eleanor discovered another lesson that many seniors overlook. Saving money is only half the equation. The other half is allowing yourself to enjoy it. For years, she had been afraid to spend anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. She treated every dollar as if disaster was waiting around the corner. Then one afternoon she asked herself a difficult question. What exactly am I saving this money for? She was healthy, she was independent, and she wasn't guaranteed tomorrow. So she began allowing herself small pleasures. Lunch with a friend, fresh flowers for the kitchen table, a new book from her favorite author, an occasional weekend trip, nothing extravagant. Just reminders that life was meant to be lived, not merely preserved. One viewer once wrote, "My children love me, but my savings allow me to sleep at night." That may sound cold, but there is wisdom in it. Financial independence doesn't replace family. It protects your relationships from becoming defined by dependency. When Eleanor visits her children today, she doesn't feel like a burden. She doesn't feel like a responsibility. She feels like a mother enjoying time with her family, and that's a very different experience. At 78, she no longer measures wealth by the size of her bank account. She measures it by something far more valuable, the ability to make her own decisions, the ability to solve her own problems, and the ability to live each day without constantly worrying about who she might need to ask for help. Because in old age, money isn't really about money. It's about dignity. And dignity is one of the most valuable forms of independence a person can ever possess. When Eleanor was younger, she never worried about loneliness. There was always someone around. A husband in the next room, children running through the house, neighbors dropping by, co-workers to talk with. Life felt crowded. Then, little by little, things changed. Her husband passed away. Her children became busy with their own families. Friends moved away, faced health problems, or passed on themselves. Without realizing it, Eleanor's world became smaller. One afternoon, she noticed something that unsettled her. 3 days had passed without a meaningful conversation. Not an argument, not a discussion, not even a simple exchange that made her feel seen. 3 entire days. She told me later, "It wasn't silence that bothered me. It was feeling invisible." Many seniors assume loneliness comes from being alone, but that's not entirely true. Some people live alone and feel content. Others are surrounded by family and still feel isolated. The real problem isn't physical isolation. It's the feeling that nobody notices whether you're there or not. For a while, Eleanor waited for people to reach out. She waited for calls, waited for invitations, waited for someone to remember her. But eventually she realized something important. Connection rarely comes to those who only wait. Sometimes, you have to create opportunities for it. So she started small. Every Tuesday morning, she attended a local community coffee gathering. The first few weeks were awkward. Most people already seemed to know each other. She considered quitting more than once, but she kept showing up. And that's when something surprising happened. People began recognizing her. Someone remembered her name. Someone saved her a seat. Someone asked how her week had been. These were tiny moments, yet they made a tremendous difference. Because every human being wants to know that their presence matters, Research consistently shows that older adults with regular social interaction tend to experience lower rates of depression, anxiety, and cognitive decline. Not because conversation magically solves problems, because connection reminds us that we still belong. Eleanor also learned that meaningful connections don't require dozens of friends. In fact, they often come from a handful of familiar faces. The cashier who greets you by name, the neighbor who waves every morning, the walking group that notices when you're absent, the volunteer team that expects to see you every week. These simple relationships create a powerful sense of belonging. One day, Eleanor missed her weekly coffee gathering because she wasn't feeling well. The following week, 2 people immediately asked where she had been. "We were worried about you." Those 4 words touched her more deeply than she expected. Someone noticed. Someone cared. At 78, Eleanor understands something she didn't know when she was younger. You don't need a large social circle. You don't need endless conversations. You don't even need everyone to understand you. You simply need a few people who know your name, recognize your face, and are glad to see you. Because in old age, meaningful connections do more than fill your calendar. They remind you that you still matter. And sometimes, that reminder can carry you through even the hardest days. At 78, Eleanor has learned a lesson that took her decades to fully understand. Without your health, everything becomes harder. Your purpose becomes difficult to pursue. Your routine starts falling apart. Your finances become more stressful. Even maintaining relationships requires energy that poor health can slowly take away. For years, Eleanor believed that staying healthy meant avoiding major illnesses. As long as she wasn't in the hospital, she assumed she was doing fine. But one winter morning changed her perspective. She was carrying a basket of laundry down the hallway when she tripped on the edge of a rug. Fortunately, she didn't break anything. But the fall shook her confidence, not because it caused serious injury, because it revealed how vulnerable she had become. For several days afterward, she moved more carefully. She hesitated before using stairs. She found herself reaching for furniture when walking through the house. And for the first time, she wondered what might happen if the next fall was worse. Many older adults fear disease, but often, what truly threatens independence is something much simpler. Losing strength, losing balance, losing mobility, losing the ability to do ordinary tasks without assistance. Eleanor's doctor explained it this way: the goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to remain capable for as long as possible. Those words stayed with her. Because capability creates freedom. The freedom to cook your own meals. The freedom to drive to the store. The freedom to get out of a chair without help. The freedom to stay in your own home. Eleanor decided she wasn't going to wait for a health crisis before taking action. She started with one small habit. Every morning, after breakfast, she walked around her neighborhood for 15 minutes. Nothing fast. Nothing impressive. Just movement. At first, she noticed little difference. But after several weeks, climbing stairs became easier. Her energy improved. She slept better at night. Most importantly, she felt stronger. Encouraged by her progress, she added a few simple exercises. Standing up from a chair 10 times. Gentle stretches while watching television. Practicing balance by standing on one foot near the kitchen counter. These activities seemed insignificant. Yet over time, they transformed the way she felt. Because health isn't built through occasional heroic efforts. It's built through small actions, repeated consistently. One physical therapist told Eleanor something she never forgot. The difference between independence and dependence often comes down to a few basic movements. Can you get up from a chair? Can you step over a curb? Can you carry groceries? Can you recover if you lose your balance? These aren't glamorous abilities, but they determine how much control you have over your daily life. Eleanor also made changes inside her home. She removed loose rugs, improved lighting in hallways, placed frequently used items where they were easy to reach, installed a grab bar in the shower. Small adjustments, but each one reduced risk and increased confidence. As the months passed, she noticed something unexpected. Taking care of her health affected more than her body. It changed her mindset. She felt less fearful, less dependent, more optimistic about the future. Because every healthy choice reinforced the same message. I can still take care of myself. One viewer once wrote, "My children worry about me constantly. The best gift I can give them is staying as healthy and independent as possible." Eleanor agrees. She loves her children deeply, but she no longer expects them to carry the responsibility for her well-being. She sees health as her responsibility, her investment, her daily commitment. Today, When people ask her what supports her most at 78, she doesn't mention luck. She doesn't mention family. She doesn't mention age. She simply says, "My body is the home I live in every day. The better I care for it, the more freedom I have." And perhaps that's the greatest truth about growing older. Health doesn't guarantee happiness, but it makes almost everything that creates happiness possible. Because in the end, your strength, your mobility, and your ability to care for yourself may become the most reliable support system you will ever have. So let me ask you one final question. If your children became busy tomorrow, if your spouse were no longer beside you, if life suddenly changed in ways you couldn't control, what would hold you up? At 78, Eleanor found her answer. Not dependence, not expectations, not waiting for someone to rescue her. Instead, she built a life supported by 5 powerful pillars: purpose, routine, financial independence, meaningful connections, and health. None of these things appeared overnight. They were built one small choice at a time: a morning walk, a weekly commitment, a new friendship, a healthier habit, a reason to get out of bed. That's how independence is created. If this message resonated with you, leave a comment and tell us which of these 5 areas you're working on today. And if you enjoy content that helps you live stronger, wiser, and more confidently after 70, please like, subscribe, and join our growing community. Remember, growing older is inevitable. Growing stronger is a choice.